It's good to be back in TIFR. Makesh. All of you have been subjected to esoteric sciences, including me, of course, and TIFR is, of course, too well known for that. So maybe you must be wondering how a dental profession got involved into this kind of academic research at the time of way back in 1965 or so. And if you look at the title, though there is a scientific data being presented today on the subject of oral precancer-cancer, but there are reflections I've written here. So there's some tidbits of TIFR, tidbits of our life in TIFR, and this was a rural India field-based research. So there are a lot of factors that got involved into the success of this project. It was not based in the lab or something like that. But you may be wondering how come dental section got involved into this. For that, you must all appreciate that it could happen only because of Professor Homi Bhabha. The man had a vision, and the personality of Homi Bhabha was such that he created a legacy in the fields in which he would not have been directly involved. So I'll try and make this presentation interesting because it relates to the precancer-cancer, which has got possibly not be a part of TIFR faculty or TIFR studies. Now, I might just take a few minutes. It was way back in 1965, after getting out of the 2 years back from the post-graduation in oral pathology. I was working with Dr. Fali Mehta, and during that time, Tata Memorial Hospital, Dr. Paymaster, who was a doyen of surgeon, would make some comments when he was treating oral cancers, it was always preceded by a white lesion. There was no preventive oncology department in Tata Memorial Hospital during that period of time also. And that prompted us to start thinking about it, because dentistry at that stage was, maybe now also, tooth and nothing but the tooth, and that is the truth. So we are just wondering whether being a dentist, you understand mouth, you understand oral mucosa, go into the medical side of it. So why would you not change the concept of oral health instead of a tooth? And that prompted us to study, because Dr. Mehta was attached also to the policemen, Bombay Police. So we started working on the captive population of what tobacco habits could lead to, because majority of all the cancers are related to tobacco, and that was understood very effectively. So during that period of time when I was working on it, I happened to go to Bangalore to speak at a meeting. That time I was trying to figure it out whether I can make a caries vaccine if I could isolate a pure culture. Anyway, it didn't appear. So in Bangalore, I was meeting. At that stage, I met one Professor Pinbog, who was a giant in his field of oral precancer-cancer working in Denmark. He was visiting professor, and after my presentation, he was sitting in the audience, and it clicked. We understood each other in the sense that he realized that India is a potential to understand this pre-cancer story because of the wide variety of the habit that is practiced in this country. And then he knew Dr. Fali Mehta, then he came to Bombay, and then there was a discussion. Dr. Fali Mehta was convinced that we should do something about it. And we shortlisted that NIH may be the right place to fund the project and so forth. Now, it involved that I should get into the TIFR to begin with, because I was the one who was an oral pathologist. So I was interviewed by Dr. Homi Bhabha, just getting one of the tidbits of him, at Dr. Mehta's office one Saturday morning. He comes down from his flat, from his bungalow at Mehergir in Hanging Garden, sauntering in a shorts with a dog around. And I was closeted with him for more than 2.5 hours when he questioned me on various things of life. You can imagine, if you go back, that was 1965. And that was one of my first interview interaction also with Homi Bhabha. And imagine that interview brought out so many insights for Dr. Homi Bhabha when he started questioning me. Eventually, On Monday, I get a letter from TIFR giving me the honorary position at TIFR with a princely sum of 300 rupees. So that's started my life at TIFR on a basis. And this I've written here, this was the reason we started the work. And unfortunately, today, those days there was only 30 dental schools. Now with more than 350 dental schools and medical institutions and so many hospitals, the statement still holds good. It's unfortunate, but it's a fact. Now that's TIFR. The two people who brought me the vision was Dr. Homi Bhabha and Dr. Fali Mehta. And you have a Professor Pinberg standing here. This was earlier our team who was present at this. We were allotted a 90 square feet is close to the medical section, and we had to start everything from that place. Now, field and follow-up studies, which were planned by us, were very effectively supported by National Institute of Health. And you know all the research workers that are here that you are not assured that your research grant will run how long. Originally, we applied for 3 years of research grant. And this was the first phase of the objectives, which broadly speaking, we were to understand the prevalence of oral cancers, precancerous lesions, and so forth. But the important point is every lesion had to be photographed. And whatever cytology and histology we did was that had to be sort of recorded in a manner that we can follow it up subsequently. Then those who had the lesions but no cancers, we had settled down for the control studies. Now, this was a 3 years project. I want to bring back the history. Dr. Homi Bhabha was leaving the last day, and myself and Dr. Mehta met him at the foyer near the staircase of the library. And Dr. Homi Bhabha, in his old typical Gujarati fashion, tells Dr. Mehta, Fali, we had asked for a grant for 35 lakhs at that stage. If they reduce even 1 naya paisa from the grant, reject the grant. I shall fund you. And he says, I'm convinced about what you are doing, and if need be, I shall provide you with an institute of that kind so that you can really change the situations in the country vis-a-vis habits, cancers, and so forth. Well, everybody knows those were the last words that they spoke to us, and subsequently we never had anything to do with Homi Bhabha. I might still mention the fact that when Homi Bhabha died, and during the same period of Lal Bahadur Shastri also died, I realized one of the comments made by the gardener here, he said that if that man was alive, that is Homi Bhabha, he would have given job to the all complete India. That was the way even an ordinary person was thinking at who Homi Bhabha is and was. It was in 1960s, everywhere you get a cancer registries. We decided to formulate a pre-cancer registry in 1966. And these were the needle of suspicion. I don't go into the details of it. This is a different field for all of you. But if you remember, we had a condition called oral submucous fibrosis, which is listed way below. But every time it was a leukoplakia or white patch that was considered important enough for all practical purposes. This is one picture on the left-hand side, which I might just mention was well done by Dr. Bhonsle, a very effective team member of our side. And there are 32 habits that you can see on the left-hand side. But if you really have to study, we study the habits in this country from Mizoram onwards to down. A catalog also may not completely do the justice. There will be more than 120 type of variety of ways the habits occur in this country. So this is the essence of the variety and diversity of the country, even in the cultural aspects. And here I've written here, there is a much that is common, but also a great deal that is particular to each area. And that's the importance of the habits, and that's the importance of our studies in this country. So we decided to choose 5 different states in India and follow 10,000 people in a house-to-house survey to understand this situation. And these villages were selected by random sample study, so it was not supported by any logistics. So one village could be on one side of the game, other one another 40 kilometers away. We were not sure about the roads and all that thing. But This was done so that our scientific data will have a validity. We use this definition, ordinary definition, a morphological altered tissue in which cancer is more likely to occur than is apparently normal counterpart, a white patch, generally speaking, and that's a white patch. One may not realize that this insignificant looking patch into the cheek can lead to serious consequences. But the next stage came up, how do we calibrate our doctors to study this lesion so that there is an equality of wavelength in discussion of what we do. Again, another bit to realize it, how we progressed. Those days, American Peace Corps people were working in India, and one of the person was working in Manchad district in Pune, near Ambegaon and Ghodegaon area, and he was being treated by Dr. Mehta at his office in Kemp's Corner. So he suggested that this is an ideal place. And we felt that would be a better place to go and figure it out whether we can do that. We went in, and I tell you very honestly, my experience of those days, going into villages of India, your contacts are very important, the first contact, which will allow us to help, because we are always in an unknown area, an unknown territory. And my experience is that always the first contact is with a Marwadi. Marwadi Seth. He looks up to the people, he's respected figure in the villages, and he goes all out to support all our activities or many other activities. So that's why we chose that area, and we did our pilot studies there of calibration of our team of doctors. This is another, a similar type of white lesion that occurs on a weapon mucosa. It still looks innocuous in that sense, but these are file pictures at the moment, but that can lead to cancer and the malignancy and bursting out into the cheek. But initial pathway of progression can be a small lesion that you saw can go. That's the word. That's why it's important that you identify and recognize anything that goes right or wrong in the oral mucosa. Now, this is one habit which I'm touching the various habits, but this is one thing that I'm sure all of you must have heard of. These are mishri. In Maharashtra, it's very common, where most of the lady servants or male servants who apply mishri or cleaning the tobacco. It can be like this after application. Subsequently, it can become like that, or you can land up into this situation also. So these are the progressive situation that is happening from a tobacco habit, but it is restricted to the site of application. We studied Bhavnagar district also. So here is I've used the word pipeful meditation because we all like to be tranquil in our life, be with anything else, maybe a cup of tea or whatever it may be. So these are the habits that cultivated. And here you find somebody is taking a clay pipe, and the heat of the pipe and the tobacco inside can lead to lesions in the upper and lower lip. And these are the kind of lesions that you saw, we studied there. And eventually it may, all lesion does not have to go into cancer, but this may. Now this is another typical habit which one gets with the BD. And you realize when you smoke BD, this is the habit. This is your triangular lesion in the corner of the mouth. It's a butterfly effect. And you find that the lesion is there, white, along with some reddish area where there's also epithelium and so forth. But these are the kind of habit, these are the kind of lesion that we studied. During those days, way back in 65, 66 and also, the only thing that we studied in the pathology book or in clinical books of medicine was this habit occurring because of the smoking cigarette. There was never anything mentioned as to what does the different habits can do in a different part of the oral cavity. And this was never registered. But a BD can give you this kind of active lesions. And you can see I'm cutting out the scientific observations on the papillary eruptions and so forth. But this is all BD is creating a lesion in the cheeks, creating a lesion on the palate, or it can create a sort of a pathology on the tongue or the posterior 1/3, where you get a loss of papillae. These are all seen and recorded by us during that period of time. And we studied all that in different parts of India. And this can be superimposed by candida infection. And if you treat with fungus infection, candida infection, you might get relief. Now, having established some of these kind of white lesions and so forth, I've just put this picture on you to realize the value of the clinical study and identification of an early, so-called early, I can't say cancers can be early or late, but so-called lesion which is dysplastic in epithelium and leading to a malignant change. You saw in the corner of the lip, and you have written here the lesion is small, but the treatment gain is big. On the other side, we have this case from Kerala. We had a large studies in Kerala, and Kerala was one place where we went in too often because the people were very literate, effective, and there's a large number of pathology does occur in Kerala. And here we have written the treatment gain is nil. We could operate on him and Kerala area. We worked in the districts only, Nakulam, Angamali, and so forth. But subsequently, we realized that whenever we identified a person as a malignant lesion or a lesion that is relevant, it was our job at TIFR in our research group that we would fly that person with somebody attending to Tata Memorial Hospital and get them directly treated or get them treated in the local areas. But the fact is, you can't do a screening and identify a person and tell him to fend for himself. You just don't do this because he's otherwise okay. He possibly is not suffering from anything according to him. So this is what we used to do. That's one of the strong strengths of our research. And then one other thing that happened when we went to TI for the field studies earlier time, in the villages we were not welcome because it was era of family planning. So when we move in, they would think that the government crowd has come for family planning and so forth, and were most uncooperative, would not believe us. And they would feel we're being a lot of money to do something. But when you see the Tata name on the jeep, it was broadly stamped, Tata, the doors opened up. The name Tata does make a difference even in the villages of India, even those years. So we were able to do. It's not easy to do this 10,000 people in a house-to-house survey and a follow-up and effectively produce the data. Now, this I have told you are indigenous habits in India. Now, I'm sure many of you might be aware of it. This is one habit which is practiced in Srikakulam, Andhra Pradesh, in India, where the person is smoking reverse. And personally, ladies, she is smoking reverse. And if you look at the folklore of that area, you realize that they smoke chutta, but reverse. It's known as Adapoga in the area, Srikakulam. The folklore says that these ladies wanted to smoke. The men, being a fisher folk, go into the sea. They don't want them to see that they're smoking, so they would smoke reverse. Other thing, the gusty ends of coastal area would extinguish the cheroot, so they decided to put it inside. They want their houses to be clean. They didn't mind the ashes falling on the tongue. And secondly, they will carry the child in hand and they don't want ash to fall on the child's face. So this is the folklore. Now, how does the ladies get into it? Because most of the time when they do this, they're working, it's like a good time cheer. They would tell their daughters to bring up the chutta. And the vendor would give the chutta knowing fully well chutta would get extinguished. He will light the chutta, give it to the daughters, the young girls from the age of 7 or 8, and they also start smoking. Result was they get used to the idea of smoking reverse, and we got palatal cancers happening at the age of 20, 21. These are the kind of palatal changes which so we never saw such things ever. It was so many wide variety of figures that happened on the palate that you really needed a great time to study each and every one of them to figure out how to make a diagnosis. To be very honest with you, we were not very happy with calibration. So we cancelled our first 6 months of our scientific study in Andhra Pradesh just to be on the strong track of our observation. But these are the palatal changes. A wide range of precancers can end in a. Now, in a follow-up study, it's a 10-year follow-up study, we needed the white patch. Now, what happens to the white patch? Does it stay as it is? Does it go into cancer or it can regress? Or it may recur? Surprisingly, with the same type of habit continuing, with no intervention by us, counseling and so forth, 21 to 42% of the white lesions regressed. That's the first time it was noticed and brought out openly in such a prospective study that a pre-cancer can regress on its own in spite of continuation. Otherwise, there was a feeling that all pre-cancer will lead to cancer. Here you can find a cancer growing within the lesion, and you can see it's coming out from the lesion that was sitting there. It's not coming elsewhere. It's coming within the lesion area, which understands it. The lesion itself gets transformed into a malignant pathology. Here are some of the follow-up studies from Kerala, where we understood leukoplakia in a way that we defined leukoplakia in 3 to 4 different varieties, and we were able to correlate the leukoplakia with a potential malignant change. Now, that was a necessary why the pictures were essential, because you take a biopsy from a small area, at base in TIFR needed to see the picture of the patient and be able to do the histology, because we do a small punch biopsy straight into the field directly. It is not such in a medical side where you have a large section coming through. So all the peripheral changes that's happening in the features of leukoplakia would indicate whether which is the area which is more potential for malignancy. That was the basis of these kind of studies, so that you pick up the pathology at a very early stage. Now, Professor Vaya had seen some of the slides and was quite impressed to the extent he said, where did you get the pictures? Because you are talking about those days in those years. There was one gentleman, Parsi gentleman in Kodak, he gave me a assurance that you will never run short of films. There were so many restrictions on those days, and we are thankful to him, he carried on. Subsequently, during the visit in US, I might just add this extra tidbits, Dr. Mehta and sir, he met one Land, Dr. Land of Polaroid. The Polaroids were just coming in. So we made that offer that your Polaroids have got a lot of conditions that apply situation. Suppose we use Polaroids in India with those conditions, if the temperature is 40, 45, would he like to try it out? How would the Polaroid film function? Without betting, he said absolutely yes. And he gave us 5 and 6 sets of cameras and promised an unlimited supply of the films. And we used subsequently the Polaroid. Important thing happened when you take a Polaroid, even the villages got impressed that it's like a magic. Any technology which you don't know appears to magic for all of us. And this is what subsequently we started using Polaroids also. So many people have helped us in getting our project, supporting our project in different ways. These appear maybe small, but these are quite important to do this kind of work. This is in Andhra Pradesh, the palatal cancers, but these are all documented follow-up cases of all our field studies. One thing happened that I told you, that leukoplakia on its own can regress, but here you can see that regression of the leukoplakia, a white lesion regress without any intervention, without continuation of the tobacco habits. So regression. So in a very small sentences, we could, for the people at large or the doctors, we wrote these findings. The incidence of precancer lesion exclusively among people with tobacco, carcinoma exclusively among tobacco habitues, and all carcinoma originated from precancer lesion, because we found no single case of cancer coming in from person who had no habits, like there was no de novo cancers. And this is, we called it a kind of a bedrock or mantra of prevention. And we made this little slide. I'm playing with the words, but it's very important enough when you talk to the dentist and so forth. Precancer is where tobacco is and cancer is where precancer is. This was our story, and we felt we were on the track. There's one other condition I'm sure all of you are aware of now in India. It's coming up so strongly, actively, that you'll be surprised. There's a progressive inability to open the mouth. And this is basically related to arecanut. Arecanut has been in India for more than 2,000 years or so forth. And we never heard so much of this condition. We went to the background of Charak and Sanjita also. There was never a mention of such a condition or description of a lesion like that, inability to open the mouth. But this was noticed by us at various times in our field studies. And the entire collagen deposition takes place all over the mouth, and you find that you can't open the mouth. There's a total restrictions. And I'm just showing you one protocol, our studies on these, not going to the entire field data. That we did this in Gujarat in 1966. And we saw only 16 cases of submucous fibrosis. in 10,000 individuals, and all were females. Every 30, no tobacco taken. But then we went back to the same area in 1990. This was a very eminent work done by our statistician, a very brilliant guy, Dr. P.C. Gupta, and Murthy and Bose and Dr. Sinor. All these young as a contribution of a large number of our group. And you can see what was written then in the papers. Overwhelmingly meant 97%. And 79 patients under the age of 35 years. This is fibrosis happening so big from 1967 to this was a transformation way back in 1990. And we back in 1998. And in our Dr. Sinor's clinic in dentistry, we did a case control study and we found 164 cases of fibrosis. And we wrote at that time that this could lead to an increase in the incidence of oral cancer in the future. And oral cancer was basically associated with tobacco, a white patch. And suddenly we found that this progressive inability to mount was becoming a serious case when you started using a tobacco. And this is a mawa which you must have seen. It was the one introduction of pan masala along with tobacco. And this is the one we studied in Bhavnagar, where there were diamond polishing workers, hiragasu what they call it, would keep chewing the pan masala all the time. If you travel in India, you'll find all taxi drivers and everybody would be keep chewing this thing in a different form. And this is I've just given a description of mawa. And you can see the relative score was 106.4, but when you add with tobacco, it's 780 so far. I just mentioned the Borgia's law was a higher administrative authority in Vatican, and sometime he had issues with the people in there, and he did make some killing. It's known as the Borgia's law. I'm sorry. Indian market in pan masala then came to 120 when this was 1995. This was and during that period of time, I was asked to be visiting South Africa because our Indian community were extensively involved in these habits also. Nobody knew that, but they were using areca nut. Pan masala possibly not gone in. That was a time where we couldn't use our document to go to South Africa. But there, Professor Van Beek also found fibrosis, and he felt 2 cases of cancers in fibrosis without tobacco habits. That's what his observation was. Now, this is, of course, all of you know that, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, this is a hoarding, this is a welcome garland you'll find everywhere. I called it a cautious for carcinogen. It is a seduction, but at the upper end. Now, cancer got rejuvenated with this new habit introduced. A good cancer shot in the arm. It's the changing pattern. Our studies brought out this changing pattern. We thought what was a simple study of tobacco, leukoplakia, precancer turned out to be some more complex situation. And that's why by 2004, fibrosis came out to be a force to be reckoned with. This condition was an enigma for us also in 66. It was first observed in 50 or written about in 54 in Kenya by Dr. Schwartz and in Indore by Dr. Damanlal and Joshi in Maharashtra. But it was an enigma to the extent nobody took it seriously. But our studies brought out this thing that it became a force to reckon with. Here is a 4-year-old boy, not with a slide by Dr. Hazare who used to work with us. You can see the 4-year-old boy because the uncle would feed areca nut in that. There are enough examples, giving chocolates, other uncle would be feeding areca nut and so forth. There's no tobacco. And you had a fibrosis at the age of 4. Same gentleman after 16 years. Luckily, he doesn't have a dental issues, otherwise you can imagine what can happen. But this issue is far, far more prevalent than we realize it because nobody has repeated the study that we have done it so far. During that Manmohan Singh period of time, when India was globalized, I used the word India is Gutkalized, and you started getting these Gutka, Pan Masala going all over the world. And this is the Edward power, Pan Parag, and these are just play with the words, but this is the power of the Edward. Unche loge, unche person, and so forth. You all know this, gentlemen, but this is the power that has led to a situation where Gutka logic was very simple. Pre-cancer is slow. It takes years before you get the lesion with the habits. Cancer is still slower transformation, but the kick is fast when you take this thing. And profits are, of course, faster. It's a rags to riches story for Gutka industry. And just with a little pun, and is chew now, cancer later. That was a game changer of Gutka because that became a prominent factor for creating a fibrosis. And when the tobacco was added, fibrosis turning into malignancy became a next natural step. So business-wise for the industry, this is the ideal disease. And therefore, I can say that you buy SMF at Cancer 2. It's like 2 to 1, buy one, take one. Unfortunately, we all know this thing, but it's still actually a very prevalent habit and a very strong industry. Unless you have a political will to do something about it, it may not work out. And we can see further up, this is the house of Gutka in Pune. This is the gentleman who was in rags to riches story of Gutka. This is the whole. Now, when we do this precancer, it's a very simplified thing. When you look at the deeper part of the whole thing, the truth is very simple. The nature of the habit decides the location of precancer and cancer. It's like it didn't require a lot of effort to figure it out that if you apply tobacco on a site of application, you will get a lesion there. Or when you get arecanite probability, you will get the generalized lesion all over the mouth. Submucous fibrosis is important thing. It entirely universalizes the entire mouth, which means the cancer will occur anywhere in the mouth. But with tobacco application, the cancer would generally occur at the site of lesion. Here you find, I'm just showing you a few cases here, the cancer of a person. They're very difficult cases to treat and so forth. Here is on the tongue. You can see entire tongue has become walled. And on the lip. So if we saw anywhere in the mouth, it can get you cancer or it can end up, if not treated. You can see these cases still, particularly in the field studies we saw them. But today also, you sometimes, once in a while, I do come across the cases which has not been taken care of. We had 30 years of work, 2 in the population, 7 Indian states in India. I might mention here, we had a big issues of how to take out the tables and statistics and so forth, because we didn't have a computer. We didn't have experts in TIFR. Narasimha Rao and Maithili Rao came into picture, and then it was, during those days, we had to do with hands, everything. But that's why I said dedication was there. And I was mentioning recently in the afternoon for coffee, the word, I used the word P. There was a passion for all our teamwork. Otherwise, this would not have happened. If you look at it, even the girls who were employed with us in our studies, who wanted to join us, knowing fully well, we had to go to washrooms and toilets all in the fields and the villages. Those were the days when they did from 66 to 69, those ladies, 2 doctors, that they worked. You have to work. You don't know where you're going to stay. You don't know when you're going to eat your food. We did work in the villages with that pathway. There's a lot of this publication, what you say, we have three of these volumes joined together. This is one of the books that is released by me and other 3 editors, written, published by Oxford, London. And this is the 3rd one you see tobacco. We had produced 287 pictures showing the different morphological features which indicate the potentiality of precancer lesion. The book is still there. We sold it for only 75 rupees. For anybody to understand, appreciate when to take a biopsy and for where to take a biopsy. Simple biopsy doesn't make a difference because you take a biopsy of the wrong area. And of course, we had the early detection, the absolute on the extreme right is a small little 40-page little thing which explains to in practical reality how to go about it by every dentist. But as I told, we gave it distributed free to all the ENTs and all the dentists. Many other things came out of our TIFR research. I'm just mentioning briefly. For the first time in the history, that WHO Collaborative Center was given to a central, like basic dental research unit in TIFR. There was an argument at the Government of India level in Delhi, when I think Professor Precancer-Cancer was with us, that the center must go only to the country, not to the sub-center, to the place. But Professor Swensward, WHO chief, just wrote down the list that on the chalk with the board and said quiet. So it's a pretty honor to be rewarded this. And we, beside this Southeast Asia, we have a lot of people from Australia, US and other coming in to study this pre-cancer thing. That was to me very distinguished recognition for TIFR also to be honored like that. And I might just say by side, those who were there in American European institutes sometimes wondered that TIFR is only an institute for medical and dental research, having not understood what TIFR is truly. So to some extent, I suppose we did added some value to TIFR also in our own manner. We were basking in the glory of TIFR, but we added some value to TIFR. I think that was the way. This Gutka ban in Maharashtra came only because of our study. We were the main side document. At that time, I just wanted TIFR to call a press conference and take the credit. The lessons learned, very simply, the biorealistically, oral cancer is not an effectively targetable lesion. Oral precancer, I'll go very briefly. Now we came to third phase, intervention. That can I, with our method, bring out the tobacco habits to reduce the precancer to normal. Accordingly, the cancers will also possibly go down. Because we know the cause and cure for oral precancer. Here the tobacco road piggy bank of Bitlab. Arecanut was the most innocent thing till we studied. And that time International Association of Research Cancer meeting at WHO in Paris 1985, they put arecanut also as a carcinogen. How far it is true, to be very honest with me, I still will not be able to subscribe to that thought. And why do people tobacco habits? I'll just go very briefly with a study in Kerala. 48% picked up tobacco habits in Kerala because of the tooth problems. Tobacco does dampen the toothache as a counter-agent. This is a very fine study done reported by principal author Gupta and others and Murthy. And you can find that the relative risk for particular type of nodular leukoplakia we have identified is 3,243, and the submucous fibrosis was unheard of, becomes the second one. So if you give up tobacco habit, as I've written there, you lose a habit, but you do win at the end of the day. And here are just example of a regression of the leukoplakias with intervention studies. We use basic health workers in Kerala also to do this kind of work for us. Later, this was a new thing came up, that we found cancers happening in the people with no habits. It's a malignant punishment to habit innocent. You have no reason why this will happen. So therefore, like the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. And we use a common sense approach because absence of absolute proof does not predict absolute absence of common sense. So in a scientific audience, we may not use the word tobacco causes. Because if A causes B, B must occur because of A, and B cannot occur without A. So, but for general public and for generally all speaking, tobacco is a prime devil for these kind of a thing. Here, nutshell, oral cancer is our limitation. Oral precancer is a holy grail. And this is a very simple thing, it can be followed, total charity, and it's a wide one that, I mean, there's no two opinion on that. And I wrote a small little thing, that I used the word temporal role, time-associated role, and prioritization of precancer, and indicating the reversibility of precancer, and the absolute irreversibility of the fait accompli cancer. This is one thing that we must realize. It's a fait accompli oral cancer is absolutely irreversible. We have all the strength and the reason and a power to bring out pre-cancer to normal, but not cancer to any other thing. And all said and done, cancer is still a situation which possibly has no cure. Worrying about a fait accompli cancer is impotency on part of the profession, everybody. But you work on pre-cancer is very important for all together. You needed the paradigmic shift on oral cancer in Indian. It's like a penny drop. It was there. But all these exhaustive studies that we have undertaken, it proved beyond any reasonable doubt that you need to figure it out the way you take care of the precancers. Simple solution, but not being used. You can use primary prevention by removing the risk factors, easiest thing to do. You can just prevent the disease. It's a paradox. The most preventable disease becomes a serious issue all over the world, maybe more so in our country, where you find 5 cases of cancer happening in mouth and 5 in hypopharynx, which effectively put to 10 cancers a day in that area. Leukopenia can be reverted. Submucous fibrosis is again irreversible. And that's unfortunate part of submucous fibrosis. You have a morbidity and inability of such a high order that you can't do much, and there's no cure. Etiology, again play with the words, tobacco is leukopenia, areca nuts, so eat and be damned. I might just touch the social aspect of it on this kind of a presentation. Advertising created demand where none existed. Edward Power at its zenith. This is still going on so strongly. I never silence it. All the medical dental profession, we are all very silent at these things. Philip Award function 2020. And you have a Philip media and corporate houses. The Times of India has unfortunately some other has always followed the path of making money rather than looking at the health of the issues. But this is the true thing that's happening. And most of our actors, you must have seen the advertisement by Vimal and all those things. Here is a triple power working out, and this is what happens. So how do you do about it? You have to explain to them. You can't be moralist. The people who take habits, you don't just condemn them, but like Jean accuse. You have to be suggestive, be friendly. In these days, affluenza to change lifestyle is not easy. But it's important for you to understand the human nature of the people who take up the habits. We also take habits. So you have to understand, you can't accuse people. Doctors treat disease, but they also treat people. And this is where you come into, like, when you deal with a personal communication, like you're doing a dilemma. He says, Janami dharma nacha me pravrutti. I know what I ought to do, and jolly well I don't. This is the same dilemma existing with the people who have the habits. You have to be careful. You can't force. And Janami adharmam. Knowing what I ought not to do, but still I continue to do it. So this is a kind of a dilemma. Now, there's a part of the profession to deal with this kind of a human nature also. That's the only way you can succeed. Regression of the leukopenia. This is secondary prevention, which I just showed you. You can do this, and that might make a difference. Here, I still write this. Areca nut is a true association. 2 minutes. And cancer in tobacco. This is again an essay with a habit. And here is squamous cell carcinoma. You can imagine how do you treat such person? Revisiting and challenge some norms, a shift from cancer to precancer. And I call it attention deficit syndrome. It's so simple. You have to be aware, then you can get attended to. And then only your energy flow into the direction of doing something serious. But this attention deficit syndrome is so strong. This kind of work, what we have done, has never been duplicated. Nobody is following it up. And if I write here what Siddharth Mukherjee wrote a very book on Emperor of Maladies on cancer, the fear is the cancer. And its palliation is the daily task. Its cure is not possible. And you can imagine, you can go go backwards, you will find which medical disease has a cure. Majority of them are chronic. And therefore, when you try to cancer as a cure, you should rather be take as a palliative situation rather than curing. In reality, philosophically speaking, when does a patient ever become a person? Now, those days of mine were TIFR, they're gone. And this is when in Vanvas, Lakshman asked Ram, they went happy days with their mothers were treating their family. And Ram says this, those were my happy days at TIFR. As I told you, it was a P for passion that made our team work, and we were happy about it. And I thank TIFR for that. And I'm grateful to the team that worked for it. I couldn't get a better word in English for Kritagna. And I say grateful and obliged for all those in our team who did this perform in our research. The word is Kuttabna. I used it from Sanskrit. Both the Sarvanpati Aham Kuttabna Asmi. A lot of people in TIFR, right from workshop, Gadial and all that kind of things what we heard. These are grateful. And I'm grateful to you all for this patient gathering and inviting me to come. I thank alumni group and the director for making me come. Thank you very much, all of you.